A millionaire cowboy shockingly reveals his heart. He unexpectedly saves a widow and her baby. Jake Mercer's truck trudged through the rain-soaked roads of West Texas, the headlights slicing through the darkness. He clenched the wheel, feeling the weight of the world pressing down. The sprawling ranch that had taken him years to build felt more like a gilded cage than a sanctuary. "What am I doing with my life?" he muttered to himself, drowning in self-doubt. His fortune and respect seemed hollow compared to the ache of isolation. Did wealth define a man, or did it simply mask his worthlessness? Suddenly he spotted her, a figure in the storm, struggling with an old car bathed in headlights' glow. A shift in Jake's gut trembled like a storm brewing just beyond the horizon. He felt like a knight in a tale gone awry. Pulling over, he hopped down from the truck, the rain instantly drenching him. "Need a hand?" he called, keeping his voice steady despite the turmoil churning within. Clara Thompson looked up, eyes glowing with disbelief. "I'm fine," she snapped, her pride warring with desperation. But beneath that facade was a woman worn thin by grief and judgment. "I'll manage," she added, dismissive yet unconvincing. Yet something in her voice tugged at Jake, pulling him closer, overcoming her reluctance. As they worked on the car, Jake felt the tension between them begin to dissolve. With every shared glance, every piece fitted, he learned more about her life. A widow, barely managing, with an infant in a dented trailer. The world had turned its back on her, labeling her as someone unworthy of compassion. Meanwhile, Jake faced the ghosts of his own past, the loneliness in wealth, the suffocating expectations laid upon him by family obsessed with legacy. The bond between them deepened, but so did the stakes. The city was eyeing Clara's land with greedy intentions, coveting not just her property, but the life it contained. Knowing his family's corporate interests rested on the similar land twisted his gut tighter. If he didn't take action, Clara could easily lose everything. Yet how could he betray his family's name? The conflict raged within him like thunder echoing against the mountains. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each passing hour, Clara's fierce determination to protect her home bore down on him, starkly contrasting with his inherited sense of obligation. Could she be the key to finally breaking free from the shackles of his legacy? His heart raced with the notion, but the looming threat of his family's corporation kept his thoughts racing in circles. Jake watched Clara as she cradled her infant daughter, her eyes glistening with unspoken fears. The very thought of her facing eviction, powerless, sent a reality check crashing over him. Torn between choosing the woman who restored his crushed spirit and the family who defined his name, he was left grappling with unanswered questions. As the rain echoes against the roof of the car, an electric tension crackled between them. The storm that had once brought them together now felt like a harbinger of their impending conflict. The need for resolution loomed larger than life, swirling ominously. Would Jake gather the courage to redefine himself, or would he let an impending storm of corporate greed destroy what had just begun? As Clara looked at him, eyes fierce with determination, Jake could barely breathe, realization dawning within him painfully slow. One choice could change everything. The rain began to ebb, leaving behind a dense mist that clung to the air, wrapping around Jake like a heavy blanket. Standing there, he felt as if the storm had softened not just the landscape, but also the hard edges of his existence. Clara's steadfastness struck a chord deep within him, a reminder of the essence of humanity he'd been so desperate to connect with. "Let's get you home," he offered, stepping closer, his mind racing with possibilities. In that moment, the image of his sprawling ranch flickered again in his thoughts, not as a prison, but as a resource. What was it worth if it led to isolating those he might care for? As they got back to work on the car, Jake considered the power he wielded through his fortune. Those very resources had initially filled him with pride, but now they felt like chains, binding him to expectations that numbed his spirit. Clara needed help, and deep down he felt he deserved to help her too. But how to balance his family's demands with the growing feelings he harbored? Every bolt he tightened on that car was a step into uncharted territory, both emotionally for him and strategically for Clara. What if he involved himself, leveraging his position to save her land, risking everything for a woman he barely knew, but felt inexplicably drawn to? As thoughts spiraled, Jake caught Clara's eye. She was watching him intently, deciphering his turmoil, expressing concern without a word. The resolve in her gaze lit a flicker of transformation within him. "About your land," he said cautiously, stepping closer, as if the words themselves bore weight. "I might know a way to protect it. Your family's company is interested. They might be able to help," she replied, challenge in her voice. Clara had no illusions about corporate benevolence. He respected her awareness and grit, sparking admiration he thought long extinguished in his mechanized life. "Yeah, but they'd help themselves first. Their financial appetite is insatiable," he admitted, swallowing the bitter taste of truth that lingered. The thought of his family benefiting from someone else's loss filled him with disgust. The fractious world of corporate machinations ran counter to what he was feeling around Clara, a yearning for restoration and sincerity. "I can't allow them to take what's rightfully yours, but I also can't turn my back on my family." Each word bore the weight of his internal battle. Turning from Clara to look at the rain-soaked horizon, he battled with hesitations and self-questioning. Could he alter his fate without disavowing the legacy placed upon him? Clara stepped forward, breaking the distance. "You have power, Jake. Use it wisely. You have the strength to change your path and mine." Jake nearly faltered, her conviction igniting an potential. For a moment he saw glimpses of a version of himself, one who could stand tall, not as a mere shadow of his family, but as a man capable of carving out his legacy. "What if I risk it all?" he asked, his voice strained but curious. As Clara met his gaze, the tension thickened, crackling like electricity. The realization of the what-ifs flooded in. He could shape his narrative, but at the cost of tearing down a family that had given him everything. The silence that followed was pregnant with significance, their unspoken feelings hanging heavily in the air between them. "Can you stand against them, Jake?" she whispered, her voice resolute. The question resonated in his mind, echoing like a haunting melody. The time had come to face not only the threat of corporate greed, but the demons woven through his very identity. What lay ahead would demand more than courage. It would test the core of who he was capable of becoming. As they stood there, poised on the cusp of a monumental decision, Jake could feel a fracture forming within him, one that could either liberate or condemn him, guiding them both toward an uncertain future. One thing was clear. The wheels of change had begun to turn, but the severity of the storm inside him was just beginning to brew. Could he embrace the man he was meant to be, or would he revert to the expectations of the man everyone else wanted him to be? The morning light pierced through the heavy mist as Jake awoke, the decision weighing on him like a lead blanket. The echoes of last night's conversation with Clara replayed in his mind, taunting him with their unspoken truths. He could feel a shift within, a yearning to rise from the shadows, to transform not for his family's legacy, but his own. As he stood before the mirror, he studied the reflection of a man caught between two worlds, his family's empire and the uncharted territory of altruism he now craved. The weight of expectations pressed heavily on him, yet Clara's unwavering faith ignited a flicker of possibility. Perhaps he didn't have to surrender entirely to either world. Jake dressed quickly, his mind racing, fingers deftly buttoning his shirt as he considered what steps to take. He could feel the ranch's vast expanse outside, beckoning him, promising liberation from the oppressive chains of familial obligation. After a hasty breakfast, Jake climbed into his truck, the engine roaring to life as he drove towards Clara's land. With every mile, his resolve solidified. He was no longer merely a cog in his family's machinery. He could forge a new path that included helping Clara. Yet doubt crept in. Would she truly want his help? Would she see it as pity, or worse, a power play? Arriving at her property, Jake noticed Clara tending to her garden, her hands buried in the soil, the sun catching strands of hair that glinted like spun gold. She looked up, eyes widening in surprise as he approached. He felt a rush of adrenaline. This was the moment to act. "Clara!" he called, his voice bursting with urgency. She rose, brushing dirt from her hands, her brow furrowing with curiosity. "I have a plan," he began, taking a steadying breath. "I've been thinking a lot about what we discussed. My family, they could help, but I won't let them exploit you. We can negotiate a deal that protects your land and fulfills some of my family's interests without forsaking you." Watching her expression shift from surprise to skepticism was like navigating a minefield. He saw the gears turning in her mind, calculating the risks. "And you think your family would allow that?" Her challenge rolled over him, a stark reminder of the tumult that lay ahead. "I don't care what they allow. This isn't about them. It's about you and this land. It has the potential for something great, Clara, something real." Jake could sense the hesitation in her response, perhaps fear mingling with hope. "Real?" she asked, her voice steadier than he expected. "You have a lot more at stake than I do, Jake. This could erase everything for you." "Everything is already at stake," he countered, realizing he was not just speaking to Clara, but to himself. "Stifled under expectations, trapped in a design I didn't choose. Helping you could change that." For the first time, Jake felt the edges of his fragmented identity begin to meld into a coherent picture. With every step he took toward reuniting his fragmented self, he could envision a future where he crafted his own narrative while providing Clara with the security she needed. Clara's tentative smile broke through her initial reservations, but doubts lingered in her eyes, and the tension anchored them both in place. And if they refuse, what then? His heart raced as he pondered her question. The stakes had escalated. But an unexpected feeling of conviction surged within him. He had the tools to help, and now he had to decide if he was brave enough to use them. "I won't back down," Jake proclaimed, certainty hardening his voice. "I have to fight, for you, for us. To refuse would be to abandon the life I want, to let fear dictate my choices." Their eyes locked, and in that moment Jake felt empowered, almost as if he'd crossed an invisible barrier. Yet with every surge of determination, a knot of anxiety twisted within him as well, an awareness of the force he'd be challenging. Just then, Clara straightened, a newfound resolve flashing across her features. "Then let's fight together, but we need to prepare for the backlash. There's no way your family will stand idle while you challenge them." Jake nodded, recognizing the weight of their pact. Uncertainty lingered at the edges of his purpose, but a sense of clarity began to form. Together, they would take on an insurmountable force. But how would they harness his family's wealth for good amidst the storm? With determination brewing in their hearts, they began to strategize. even as shadows threatened to emerge in the distance. Would Jake and Clara be able to withstand the forthcoming onslaught? Or would their burgeoning alliance dissolve under the pressures of familial loyalty and corporate greed? The sun hung high as Jake and Clara formulated their plan, details unfolding like layers of a finely crafted tapestry. Inside her humble home, they spread out papers and markers on an old wooden table, transforming the space into a makeshift war room. Clarity surged within Jake. He was moving beyond his family's oppressive expectations and into a role that challenged him to think critically, to feel deeply. "What's our first step?" Clara asked, tapping a pencil against her lips. Her expression wavered between hesitation and determination. "We need to map out the resources," Jake replied, his mind whirring like a machine, driven not by familial duty, but by a newfound purpose. "Identify what we have to leverage and what we're up against. Your land has value, and my family's resources can be directed constructively." Clara nodded, her focus sharpening. "And we need to establish boundaries. If they're going to come in, they'll need to know they can't dictate everything." A flicker of admiration sparked in Jake as he watched Clara articulate her thoughts. This wasn't just a woman reliant on his family's fortune. She was a formidable partner, focused on preservation and integrity. He had been so lost in his struggle that he had failed to recognize the strength in another's conviction. "Let's draft a proposal," Jake suggested, feeling more confident as they sketched out terms that would protect Clara's land while still accommodating his family's interests. "We need to present something concrete, something they can't dismiss easily." As they brainstormed, the tension between them shifted. Their shared purpose forged a bond stronger than mere partnership. Thoughts of familial expectations felt lighter, a fading echo drowned out by the urgency around them. With each point they discussed, clarity filled the cluttered corners of Jake's mind, revealing a vision that felt like freedom. But as their plans crystallized, reality pressed in, reminding him of the opposing force looming ahead. As he gazed out of Clara's window towards the horizon, doubt flickered in his gut. This resolve he felt was vulnerable. What if they refuse to negotiate? What if this backfires dramatically? Clara met his gaze, her brow furrowing slightly. "Then we have to be prepared for resistance. They aren't going to fold easily. Our argument has to be compelling, not just for them, but to the stakeholders who might support us." "Stakeholders?" Jake repeated, excitement mingling with an adrenaline rush. "That's it. I know some people, investors who align more with sustainable practices. If I can rally their interest, it could lend us credibility." A flicker of enthusiasm ignited in Clara's eyes. "That's a powerful ally. If we can show them the potential for profit aligned with sustainability, we can win their support." Jake felt genuinely invigorated by their growing momentum. Collaborating felt almost foreign, yet exhilarating. With Clara, he could explore possibilities, and for once, his identity didn't feel split. It felt whole, infused with a sense of purpose. But the gleam of hope was shadowed by uncertainty, lurking reminders of his family's immense power and refusal to adapt to change. "I know my family. If they see this as a threat, they might resort to tactics that could sabotage everything before we even begin." Clara's expression hardened, determination cutting through her previous hesitations. "Then we have to anticipate their moves. What are they capable of? How far would they go?" The weight of this question dropped heavily on Jake. Suddenly, his family's ruthlessness loomed larger than life. Would they dare to use their influence against him if he stepped too far outside the prescribed lines? Jake inhaled deeply, the gravity of his allegiance pulling at him. "Then we'll have to confront this together, ready for whatever they throw our way," he asserted, a newfound vigor coursing through him. Their eyes locked, the air thick with the uncharted potential of their venture. Uncertainty thrummed palpably around them, yet within, a shared resolve blossomed. Jake was no longer just challenging his family's legacy. He was forging a new one with Clara. As they plotted their next steps, a palpable tension hung in the air, a reality without guarantees, ripe with potential, yet shadowed by danger. And as they finalized their approach, a tremor shifted through Jake. He felt the stirrings of opposition rising, but instead of shrinking back, he embraced it. The moment of confrontation approached like a storm on the horizon. Would they rise to the challenge, or would the tides turn against them? The stakes had never been higher. Jake's heart raced as he considered their next steps, a resolute voice echoing within him. It's time we take this fight to them. Unbeknownst to him, the echoes of defiance that ignited would also awaken deeper truths buried within him, ones that could irrevocably alter the course of his life. Just as Jake identified the power of partnership, closer to him awaited an even greater realization about the warrior lying dormant within. Would he meet it, head on, or flee once again into the shadows? The evening shadows enveloped Jake as he and Clara worked late into the night, their conversation punctuated only by the scratch of pens on paper and the soft rustle of documents. The gravity of their task weighed on him, the reality of what lay ahead pressing against his consciousness like a vice. Yet amidst the urgency, he felt alive, engaged in something inherently more vital than mere compliance with family expectations. What should we prioritize in the proposal? Clara's question pulled him from his reverie. There was a fierceness in her voice that stirred something in him, a determination that mirrored his own inner fire. We start with the economic benefits of preserving your land sustainably, Jake responded instantly, excitement threading through his words. Land conservation can yield incentives and attract environmentally conscious investors. Together, they crafted bullet points and persuasive arguments, merging their strengths into a compelling narrative. Each word they penned felt like an anchor tethering him more firmly to his new identity. Could he embrace this challenge not only as a rebellion against his family's norms, but as a leap toward his true self? As moments passed, visions of his family's reaction began to spiral within him, eroding his burgeoning confidence. Fear clenched at his gut. What if they drown out our arguments or launch a smear campaign? They're experts at manipulating the narrative. Clara turned to face him fully, a fierceness igniting her features. Then it's our job to create a narrative they can't touch. We need to control the dialogue. We don't let them write the story. In her gaze, Jake recognized a resolve that amplified his own. You're right, he conceded, feeling a reinvigoration. I can't step back now. The stakes extend beyond just you and me. This is about redefining how my family operates, about shifting paradigms. The realization settled within him. He was tearing down a wall that had long defined his identity. His life had been a series of choices dictated by fear of family repercussions. Was the risk truly greater than living a life confined by the whims of a legacy he did not believe in? As they drafted revisions, Jake's excitement morphed into an electric thrill. Clara's insights were shaping his vision of what was possible, enhancing the confidence he had been hesitant to claim. Ideas he had once dismissed flickered to life, sparking dialogue that felt less like banter and more like co-creation. But with revelation often came conflict. Jake's mind spun with a mix of exhilaration and anxiety as he recalled the looming confrontation with his family. Would they see his alliances as betrayal? Was the stability his family had provided worth sacrificing for this new dream? Each question weighed heavily, immortalizing an inner turmoil he had long sought to quell. And yet, the alternative, returning to silence and compliance, seemed more painful and contrived than confrontations with potentially the fiercest adversaries of all, one's own kin. The long hours wore on, the darkness outside deepening. If we're going to do this, Clara said, breaking the silence, we need to prepare ourselves for the fight. We can't just sit and wait. We have to be active, to build alliances, to counter their narratives before they form." Jake nodded, steeling himself at her words, her unwavering bravery igniting something dormant. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll seek out those investors, draft support letters, and reach out to environmental organizations. Together, we'll build a coalition around this vision." As they plunged deeper into strategy, Jake embraced the storm brewing inside him, a tempest of determination rising to meet the challenges ahead. Each intellect-at-work moment reinforced who he was becoming, not a passive son seeking approval, but a force committed to action and change. Though the outcome was uncertain, certainty emerged in the form of personal fortitude. He was ready to confront not only his family, but also the very essence of what had held him in chains for far too long. Just as they were about to formulate their outreach plan, a sudden rattle at the door sent a bolt of shock through Jake's system. The faint rap was profound, a reminder that whether be it community or family, the repercussions of their venture were about to bridge toward him unexpectedly. Clara glanced at him with wide eyes, her voice low. "Are you ready to face whatever comes next?" Jake inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of potential change envelop him. A bold truth flashed across his mind. The fight was not merely for Clara's land. It was a fight for himself, too. "Let's do this," he said resolutely, the confrontation awaiting them looming larger than ever before. As he took a step toward the door, the anticipation solidified into determination. The storm of their challenge was upon them. The door creaked open slowly, revealing an unexpected visitor. Jonathan, Jake's older brother, his figure imposing against the dim light from the hallway. Jonathan's eyes flicked between Clara and Jake, a mix of recognition and surprise playing across his features. Jake felt a rush of emotions, anger, defiance, and a hint of fear. Could he stand firm in this moment when everything he had worked toward seemed perilously close to unraveling? "What are you doing here, Jake?" Jonathan's voice was deep, tinged with incredulity. "I thought you were back with the family, doing what we agreed to." Jake's heart raced. This wasn't just a casual visit. It was an incursion into the life he was trying to build. "I'm helping Clara with her land proposal," he said, keeping his tone steady, masking the tumult inside. Jonathan scoffed, stepping inside uninvited. "Helping? You're throwing your life away on some pie-in-the-sky dream. You know how our family operates. This won't just be a conversation. You're setting yourself up for betrayal." Betrayal. The word hung in the air like a noxious gas, thick and suffocating. "I have to believe in something, Jonathan. I'm tired of living for someone else's narrative," Jake challenged. Jonathan scoffed, stepping inside uninvited. "Helping? You're throwing your life away on some pie-in-the-sky dream. You know how our family operates. This won't just be a conversation. You're setting yourself up for betrayal." Betrayal. The word hung in the air like a noxious gas, thick and suffocating. "I have to believe in something, Jonathan. I'm tired of living for someone else's narrative," Jake challenged. Feeling a spark ignite within him, the tension crackled between the brothers, a conflict seeping into the space around them. This was the moment Jake had envisioned, a clash that transcended mere family loyalty. He was fully aware of what he was up against, yet the gravity of defiance pulled him deeper into his convictions. "Do you really think Clara and her project will change anything? Our family's influence is vast. You'll be nothing but a pariah, disowned," Jonathan shot back, his brows furrowing into a scowl. Jake's pulse quickened, but somewhere beneath the surface, the anger gave way to resolute clarity. "And what choice do I have? Stay silent, pursue a career that saps my spirit, and nod along to everything they demand? I want more than that. I want to create a legacy I can be proud of." Jonathan's expression shifted, the fierce demeanor faltering just a fraction. "You're making a mistake, Jake. They'll crush you, Jake. You think Clara is worth all this? You'll pay dearly for it." The defensiveness in Jonathan's tone revealed more than he intended. Was he projecting his own doubts about the family's expectations? Though it felt like a strategic confrontation, Jake recognized the undercurrent of fear threatening to disrupt his own resolve. "I'm not making a mistake. I'm reclaiming my life," Jake replied, aware of the gravity in his own words. Each syllable resonated, not just with Jonathan, but echoed within him, reinforcing his commitment. The room fell into a taut silence. Clara, sensing the shift, interjected. "We're working on something that matters. This isn't just about land, it's about defining our future." The question hung heavy in the air. Would Jonathan understand? Would he join the side that sought to foster change? Or would he stay entrenched, defending their family's interests? Jake felt a surge of hope combined with gnawing uncertainty. "Understand, Jonathan. This isn't just a whim or rebellion. It's purpose. Do you have any idea how empowering that feels?" Jonathan's gaze bore into Jake's, searching for hesitance, but all he found was conviction. "You're playing with fire, Jake. Just know it won't end well." The finality of Jonathan's warning weighed on Jake, yet it only strengthened his resolve. If anything, it clarified the stakes. He was not merely fighting for Clara's land. He was battling for freedom, his freedom to live authentically. As Jonathan strode toward the door, the air felt charged with unspoken promises, future conflict looming like an approaching storm. "Just remember, you've made your choice. There will be consequences," he warned one last time before disappearing into the darkened hallway. Jake turned to Clara, his internal storm coalescing into focused determination. "We need to gather our resources and finalize our proposal. If we're going to navigate this challenge, we have to be strategic." Clara nodded, her expression resolute. They both understood that the first battle had just unfolded, and there were many more to come. As they returned to their work, Jake was more aware than ever. Confronting family narratives was just the beginning. He dreaded what lay ahead, but with each keystroke he could feel the chains of his past beginning to shatter. Moments later, as they delved into plans for outreach, a thought broke through the haze. What lay beyond this proposal? Would their initiatives uncover truths about his network? Would it expose him to the very allies his family engaged for dominance? One certainty remained. The fight was only heating up, and Jake was ready. But as he looked to Clara, tension prickled the back of his neck. There was no turning back now. The real test loomed ahead, and a chilling question lingered. At what cost would he find his truth? The days that followed Jonathan's abrupt visit felt like an accelerating roller coaster. Each morning, Jake awoke to sun spilling through the window, illuminating the clutter of papers spread across the small kitchen table, the foundation of their future. Yet beneath the surface, fear simmered. The weight of Jonathan's warning loomed large, amplifying every noise and glance that surrounded him. Clara's unwavering optimism stood in stark contrast to Jake's unease. "We're close to finalizing our draft," she said one evening, excitement trailing her voice as she rifled through documents. "If we can just secure that meeting with the council, we can present our vision." Jake forced a smile, matching her enthusiasm. "Yes, let's refine the budget projections," he replied, tracing the numbers with a sense of detached urgency. Every element of the proposal felt critical, yet his mind dripped with thoughts about potential backlash from his family. The question burrowed deeper each day. Could he really risk the life he was trying to build? As Clara dove deep into the project's intricacies, Jake found himself spiraling into an unanticipated introspection. He began to uncover strategies to strengthen their project, tapping into hidden skills he had once thought irrelevant to his current aspirations. Nights alone in his small workspace had morphed into hours of research about sustainable land practices, community engagement, and local regulations. Each discovery reinforced a burgeoning belief. He could forge a narrative that mattered. Yet this newfound purpose came with a haunting realization. With each step forward, the stakes escalated. One afternoon, while thumbing through online forums, Jake came across a post from an environmental activist. The words resonated painfully with his situation, articulating the hidden cost of standing against powerful interests, intimidation, disownment, and, in some instances, violence. Was he prepared for all that could come crashing down upon him? When he shared his concerns with Clara, he watched the flicker of anxiety cloud her bright expression. "We can't allow fear to dictate our actions, Jake," she insisted, steel in her voice. "If we give in now, we lose everything we're fighting for." Her conviction pushed against the cloak of doubt beginning to suffocate him. But as their dialogue escalated, Jake unearthed something crucial. His growing belief in their mission began to eclipse the fear. It was revolutionary. The fear didn't diminish, but it transformed into raw energy, propelling him forward. Emboldened by Clara's tenacity, he began drafting a series of outreach emails, weaving a network beyond the confines of their work. Collaborations with local farmers and community groups emerged, people who could rally behind their cause. With each contact cultivated, he felt the anchor of isolation lift, replaced by an invigorating sense of purpose. Still, apprehensive thoughts loomed. Jonathan's shadow danced on the periphery, and the threat of familial repercussions loomed ever larger. Jake wrestled with the ramifications. Could he withstand the onslaught of tests from both his family and an opposing community? If standing for what he believed in came at the cost of severing familial ties, was it worth it? As the proposal took shape, Jake was confronted with a chilling reality. He must defy his brother in a way that was immediately tangible and public. It would no longer be about private family expectations. It would become a public declaration of independence. The very next day, as Jake prepared to meet the council, a sense of dread clutched at him. This was it, the moment he would lay bare his intentions, the embodiment of his fight. Torn between exhilaration and fear, Jake took a deep breath, aligning his resolve. This was a juncture that would define him. But as he stepped out, a knot of apprehension twisted tighter in his gut. Would his roots hold him back or propel him forward? Just as he reached the door, Clara called out after him, her voice steady. "After this, when we're victorious, promise me you won't turn back. Promise me you'll be ready for whatever comes next." Jake squared his shoulders, knowing he couldn't predict what was to come, only that it could change everything. The real battle lay ahead. It was only just beginning. He nodded, steeling himself for the plunge into the unknown. And with that, a fresh wave of adrenaline surged through him. The moment of reckoning had arrived, but a troubling whisper lingered. Was he ready for the consequences? The meeting room buzzed with a low murmur as Jake stepped inside, acutely aware of every gaze fixed on him. His heart raced, pounding in his ears like a war drum, as Clara positioned herself confidently beside him. She radiated an unyielding energy that pulled him into the moment, but the looming presence of his brother's warning dimmed that light. This was more than just a pitch. It was a defining choice in his life. "I need you to listen carefully," he thought, his inner voice battling against his nerves. He took a deep breath, steadied his posture, and met the council's eyes. Each member sat poised, awaiting his presentation. But Jake realized that his real battle lay beyond their initial skepticism. He was also confronting his own fears. "Thank you for being here today," Jake began, his voice more assured than he felt. We're gathered to discuss a project that isn't just about land development. It's a vision for sustainable growth in our community." Clara nodded, and it ignited a flicker of confidence within him. As he delved into the specifics of their proposal, detailing environmental impacts and community benefits, Jake noticed subtle shifts in the council's expressions. Yet, despite the spark of interest, he felt the storm brewing inside him. What if they dismissed his plea? What if his brother unleashed his influence to sabotage their initiative? He pressed on, buoyed by the hope that for once his voice could outweigh the pressure of familial expectations. Clara chimed in seamlessly, her insights weaving into his arguments like a skilled thread-binding fabric. Together, they painted a picture not merely of economic metrics, but of a shared future, a collective vision. Just as he began to believe that they might sway the council, a familiar voice cutting through the room sliced his composure. "You really think this is feasible?" Jonathan's tone was laced with condescension, suffocating the air. The council's faces shifted to a mix of curiosity and concern, directed at Jake. "Of course," Jake replied, his voice steadier than he expected, locked in a battle of wills. "It's time for us to invest in what matters, our land and our community's future. This isn't just mine or Clara's idea, it's a movement towards real, tangible change." A ripple of tension filled the room. He was calling out not just his brother's doubts, but the expectations of all they had ever known. Unbeknownst to him, his argument was igniting a deeper, more profound conflict within the council members, between their fears and the promise of what Jake was presenting. Jonathan leaned back, arms crossed, a smirk growing. "You'll find it hard to change people's minds when money talks louder," he retorted. His challenge echoed like thunder, each syllable a weight pressing down on Jake. It was a direct confrontation, not only with his brother's view, but a challenging of his conviction. Jake felt a surge of determination rise. "What if money isn't the point? This is about legacy," he shot back, the words igniting a fire inside him. His actions reflected his thoughts. He had come to realize that true wealth was in the impact he wanted to make, not just for himself, but for his community as well. The council turned their attention back to him, uncertain but intrigued. "You can choose to align with the status quo," Jake pressed, the edge in his voice firm yet passionate. "Or you can be part of a transformative journey towards sustainability and inclusivity. You have the power to make history today." As he finished, adrenaline coursed through him. He had finally taken a stand, unveiling the core of his ambition to the council and, more importantly, to himself. It was not just about this project. It was the beginning of something larger than he had ever imagined. But as the meeting concluded, Jonathan's eyes glinted with a foreboding challenge, reminding Jake that the battle was far from over. Outside, he could sense the whispers gearing up. Little did he know, a storm was brewing. The moment he anticipated had arrived, but a new question lingered. How would he contend with the depth of opposition that was yet to come? It was a treacherous path, and the outcome remained uncertain. The tension from the meeting room lingered in Jake's mind long after he left. Despite the adrenaline still coursing through him, an unsettling unease settled deeper in his gut. Walking through the corridors, he replayed every moment, every word, attempting to dissect where he had truly stood. Had he conveyed his conviction well enough? Was there a chance he had genuinely inspired the council? He stepped outside into the crisp air, hoping the coolness would invigorate his resolve. Clara followed closely, her presence a stabilizing force amidst his rising anxiety. She flashed a reassuring smile that reassured him even as dissenting thoughts brewed in the background. "You really held your ground," she said, breaking through the whirlwind of Jake's thoughts. "Did you see their faces? You made an impact." Jake offered a half-hearted smile, unable to quell the doubts creeping back in. Did I? Or did I just anger Jonathan and make a fool of myself? He ran a hand through his hair, shaking off the spiraling thoughts. What if they're just humoring us? What if they think we're just two idealistic kids out to change the world? Clara stepped closer, narrowing her gaze to focus solely on him. You are not just two idealistic kids, Jake. You've got vision, and you know the stakes. Every conversation we have pushes the boundaries a little further. There's power in that. As he processed Clara's words, Jake felt a flicker of recognition within himself, a realization that went beyond his personal apprehensions. The real challenge was not just facing the council, but addressing the internal conflicts rooted in his familial ties. Jonathan's influence has always loomed large over me, he confessed. What if he tries to sabotage our project? He's always had a way of undermining me. Clara's brows furrowed, a hint of frustration threatening to spill over. He may think he can intimidate you, but remember, that is just one narrative. You have the chance to carve out your own path. This is an opportunity to redefine everything you've grown accustomed to, but you need to focus. Focus, Jake repeated, recognizing within that simple word a key to his clarity. He needed to build a strategy, something tangible that would strengthen his position even against potential sabotage. It's time I consult allies, not just for the project pitch, but for everything Jonathan represents. The shift in Jake was subtle but remarkable. He had begun to see his vulnerabilities as strengths waiting to be expressed and capitalized upon. He proceeded to outline a plan, drawing insights from Clara and reflecting on personal connections who could support them, friends, colleagues, anyone who understood the cause. In that moment, he felt an undeniable momentum building. Over the next days, he set about gathering voices, not in a singular effort, but as a coalition of perspectives. Jake began to consider how the upcoming council meeting could turn into a decisive battle, not against Jonathan's whispers alone, but against the deep-rooted apprehension that mirrored his own. He needed them to show the council that change was not just possible, it was something they all could champion together. As he jotted down ideas, the thought struck him. He was not just fighting for a project, he was wrestling with the limitations of his own narrative. Jonathan's perception of him could change if he could rally mindful discussion behind the vision he had crafted. When the day of reckoning arrived, the renewed confidence surged through him like a cool breeze on a sweltering day. He stood poised, knowing he didn't need to battle his brother alone. The true confrontation would connect his growing self-belief with those willing to join him on this journey. The meeting loomed ahead, and he had no doubt this time would be different. But in the back of his mind lingered Jonathan's haunting words, a reminder that every move would be under scrutiny. Ultimately, Jake listened closely to the stirrings within. It was time to confront not just the council, but the very essence of familial loyalty versus personal integrity. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts, and as he turned to meet Clara's expectant gaze, Jake felt that familiar weight settle in his chest. Despite the drive for transformation, the crux of his reality still simmered beneath the surface. Would he cling to his new convictions, or would Jonathan's shadow once again threaten to engulf him? In that moment, Jake discovered yet another element of his true strength. They would all soon see that the fight for his vision would also become a fight for his identity. But would that revelation suffice to face down conflict rooted much deeper than he ever imagined? Jake stood outside the council building, the early morning sun casting a golden hue on the surrounding landscape. Today was the day. The months of planning and strategizing had culminated in this moment, and he felt a surge of determination ripple through him. His journey of self-discovery had shifted from uncertainty to clear purpose. He would not only fight for Clara's land, but for his own identity. As they entered the building, Clara's presence beside him grounded him. She embodied strength, her belief in their mission unwavering. They had gathered a coalition of supporters. Local farmers and environmental advocates stood united behind them, ready to speak their truths. It felt vital that their voices be heard, intermingled with his own. Inside the council room, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Jake took his place at the front, the weight of the moment looming large. The council members seated before him were familiar faces, some dismissive, some curious. But he felt reborn. No longer the stifled heir to a corporate legacy, Jake Mercer was ready to unleash the man he had worked so hard to become. Fighting not just for a vision, but for the freedom to redefine himself. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice steady, resonating off the walls. "Today, we're here to discuss not just Clara's land, but to initiate a transformation in how we interact with our environment and each other." As he delved into their proposal, statistics and passionate narratives merged seamlessly, each point punctuated by Clara's fervent interjections. Every argument pulled him further away from doubt, piecing together a vision centered on community empowerment and sustainable development. This wasn't merely a presentation, it was a clash of values, and he was prepared to defend not only the land, but the hope for future generations. Midway through the presentation, a familiar figure disrupted his flow. Jonathan strode in, exuding confidence, a pointed smile plastered across his face. "Isn't this quaint?" he remarked, chuckling lightly. "You think this little endeavor can withstand the might of our family's interests?" Jake felt a mix of irritation and resolve at his brother's jeers. "This isn't about our family anymore, Jonathan. It's about our community, the land we share," he retorted, the gravity of his words striking a chord not just with Jonathan, but with the council, who leaned in closer, intrigued. Jonathan scoffed, a smirk ever present. "Don't be naive, brother. The council knows who has the real power." Jake swallowed hard, tension rising in the air. "It's easy to wield power in a vacuum, but that power should serve the people, not suppress them," he declared, conviction hardening his tone. This wasn't merely a moment of defiance. It was a testament to the transformation he had undergone. The murmuring in the room shifted, sparks of interest lighting faces around him. The council members whispered amongst themselves. Clara shot him an encouraging smile, a reminder that he wasn't alone in this fight. As the discussion progressed, Jake drew on every supporter in the room, encouraging them to share their personal stories of loss, resilience, and hope. Local farmers spoke about how land and community could thrive in harmony rather than be casualties to corporate greed. It transformed the atmosphere. A ripple of connection formed among those present, creating an undeniable collective momentum. But just as Jake felt the tide turning, he sensed Jonathan regrouping. "This is just a facade. Our family's ambitions have always been for the greater good. This proposal would ruin progress," Jonathan interjected, glaring at Jake. "Progress at the cost of our community isn't progress at all," Jake countered fiercely, feeling the collective energy in the room build. "This land belongs to the people, not to a corporate entity. What good is profit if it comes at the expense of our environment?" The tension peaked, and in that moment Jake realized this confrontation was not just an external battle with Jonathan. It was an internal triumph against the voices that had once haunted him, demanding he fall in line. As he concluded their presentation, Clara took his hand, squeezing it tightly. The bond they shared symbolized more than partnership. It represented the courage to pursue true purpose. And in that moment, Jake was bubbling with potential. When the council members began to deliberate, anticipation hung thick in the air. "This is it," he thought. Victory was close enough to taste. But even if they didn't succeed, he knew he had broken free of the constraints that had held him captive for too long. Finally, a member of the council spoke. "We've listened to both sides today, and while the financial implications are complex, your passion resonates. We will take this under consideration, but know that communities like yours can indeed set a precedent for responsible land use." Jake felt a rush of exhilaration. The shift inside him solidified. He had fought for a vision of integrity, and no matter the outcome, he had chosen his own path. As the meeting adjourned, Jake stood tall. He felt like a new man, proud, grounded, and free. Clara engulfed him in a bear hug, joy radiating off her. "We did it, Jake. No matter what happens next, you fought, and you wouldn't have done so before." He grinned, his heart swelling with gratitude. "We fought," he corrected, seeing the extraordinary woman who had helped his true self emerge. While Jonathan exited the room, he turned his gaze towards Jake, a mix of resentment and an unfamiliar admiration flickering across his features. It was clear that the battle wasn't over. There would be more challenges ahead. But Jake knew now he wouldn't run. He wouldn't hide. He had surrendered only to his own potential, reclaimed his voice, and set a course toward a life defined by purpose, not legacy. As he left the building hand in hand with Clara, a bright future shimmered on the horizon. The storm that had once threatened to dissolve everything in its path had transformed into a catalyst for unprecedented growth. And Jake knew, regardless of obstacles to come, he was ready to embrace whatever unfolded next. Now, more than ever, he had a mission, not just for Clara, but for himself. It was a journey of courage, creating a narrative that would not only secure their future, but rekindle a sense of belonging he had thought lost. This was the moment he had sought, and now there was no turning back. Are you inspired by Jake's transformative journey? You need to subscribe now to ensure you never miss another exclusive emotional story like this. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more people who need this kind of inspiration in their lives. Comment below with your thoughts on Jake's incredible evolution and what you think his next challenge will be. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need a powerful story of personal overcoming. Your support matters.